Of course, AMS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to the meeting. Business items are first presented by staff and consultants. After the committee discusses the business items, the public is invited to public comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items: if you're doing it virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press star 6. Yes, sir. So at the last policy committee meeting, it was mentioned that the chair is more limited in his capacity of what he can and can't do on a committee. After looking into it some more, Robert's Rules of Order actually has exceptions for small committees. So committees of 12 or fewer have exceptions. One of those exceptions, the chair is able to make a motion. Technically speaking, he doesn't have to pass the gavel when making a motion and having discussions. However, we do ask that if the chair is going to be making motions and having discussions on an item, please pass the gavel to the vice chair, whoever is appointed, so then he can get addition versus the policy committee. So, we'll kind of get into the swing of it as time goes on. So I just want to make that clarification, and also just wanted to remind everybody, same thing I said at the TAC. It's kind of good to remind everyone. Motions, we ask that you state your motion in its entirety prior to getting the second. The second knows what is being brought forward, and the chair will ask for the second. So it's just kind of all keeping us all on the same page and making it easier for us to follow along as we are doing the minutes. Lori is doing all the hard work on the minutes. Thank you.
Changes that other sections to
So 40 years. So advisory committee has leadership from various sectors of behavior, sports. Anyway, we have so with the memo, there's also look at it. Logistics.
Yep. So. You see, can anyone? That was me unmuting. Okay, so we're having some issues with the microphones, saying about every 10th word or so people can hear, so. See what we get. Okay, hold on, it's maybe clearing up.
It's better now.
Okay,
I don't know.
okay, so they can hear us now. Looks like it's muted. I think that's only for the main primary now. I don't know. Yeah.
It's better.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Good, bro, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. No problem. We're on to action item 5B, the Community Advisory Committee nomination. And I'm gonna assume that John's gonna, no?
No, this is actually Christine Shuey,
Christine.
the staff of the CAC. We're throwing a curveball.
Hi, Christine Judy, also planner at AMATS and facilitator of the Community Advisory Committee. On that committee, 6 of those 12 or 11 seats are district members, assembly district members. Right now, we have a vacancy on District 3 and District 6. We have a nominee here today to fill the seat of District 6, Nancy Pease, who's with us today. And I'll just read a little bit about what she wrote in her bio. Nancy has been engaged continuously in local transportation and land use issues for over 40 years. In reviewing her resume, she has extensive education and professional experience in land use planning and public involvement. Nancy was a municipal planning and zoning commissioner for 7 years. And in that capacity, she reviewed both specific transportation projects and long-range transportation projects. And has reviewed many AMATs, DOT, and MOA plans over her years. She would be a strong advocate for land use issues and from the local perspective, and would be an active liaison with her community councils in District 6.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
I have a couple questions for the nominee, if that's okay. Is Ms. Pease here? Oh, yes. Hi, Nancy, thank you for being here. First, I wanted to ask kind of a clarifying question. In your application, you speak about you'd like to, so Anchorage has not drafted a local long-range transportation plan since about 2007. And I wondered if you would just kind of unpack that for me a little bit, just because, as I understand it, the MTP is sort of our long-range transportation plan. And then we also have in process right now with the planning department a long-range transportation policy plan that the assembly funded. So that's a work in progress with many community members involved that will sort of, I hope, help guide future MTPs. But what do you envision when you think about a local long-range transportation plan?
Well, I'm keenly interested in the project that the AMS has funded, the assembly has funded as a sort of additional or complement to what AMATS has adopted. At the AMATS level, the state is a very major player. And I think sometimes the granular level of local needs and are not really expressed in a timely and effective and efficient way. And so I'm looking for a way for the local vision to be well integrated into the AMATS process. And part of that can be through a very active community advisory committee, but also to have some portions of that vision adopted by the local body, I think is really valuable. So I'm not necessarily saying that there will be a need for a new fund and a new funding for a new plan. There is funding, as you said, for a policy statement, and I think, that's where we'll start.
Great. And then second question, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. You highlight your interest in land use and your background as a P&Z commissioner for 7 years. Thank you for doing that work. Because you're sort of the nominee for District 6, I guess a question and a concern that I have, there's a lot swirling right now around land connected in your district. For instance, the Assembly is currently considering whether we put a bond before voters, the CASA bond, right, to help pay for some of that infrastructure out there in the LRSAs. One of the concerns that I have is how low housing density in your district makes services more expensive. Not only capital improvements, but also maintenance. And I think with the Assembly's work that we're doing on housing, we often do hear from your district and your community council in opposition to housing density. And so with the focus on land use and realizing that, both our TIP, our MTP, they're fiscally constrained, how can we deliver a level of service and infrastructure to those, I guess, those low density areas, and what are the opportunities for growth? So just want to hear from you a little bit about housing density and potentially challenges and opportunities in your district going forward.
Okay, well, I am all for right sizing. And in areas of low density, you don't always need a multi-lane divided type of facility. I don't know that, the design for Diamond, for example, that does not need to be replicated for Huffman Road or Jarman Road, and possibly, depending on traffic counts, for Rabbit Creek Road. So I think most people on the hillside don't want to overbuild either. So right sizing is one response there. And then in terms of density and future housing density and how that fits into transportation, I am very much grounded in the desire to have our vehicle miles traveled be a factor in where we build. And so in some cases, you change the land use to change the travel pattern, and some instances, it's the location. Where are you putting denser uses? And every additional unit put at the periphery of town, it not only then, adds to the desire for more services on the periphery of town, it creates a lot more miles because everybody does go downtown eventually. So vehicle miles traveled is, I think, a factor that we need to consider when we talk about future density. Where should it go? How can we cluster things and not have sort of mid-level sprawl everywhere?
Thank you. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Ms. Pease? Hearing none, are there any comments from the public? Not seeing any. What is the will of the committee?
I'll move to approve Nancy Pease as a member of the Community Advisory Council.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Colhase, seconded by Ms. Ocon. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, motion is approved. And I guess I'll say that having worked on a lot of projects in the Anchorage Bowl, if you've worked on a project in the Anchorage Bowl, then you know Ms. Pease's name. So I certainly appreciate her passion and her dedication to improving transportation in Anchorage. And thanks for your willingness to participate.
Thank you for your vote.
Yeah.
All right, action item number 5C is the TAC comments on the draft 2050 MTP project list.
I'm not gonna guess who's gonna present on this one.
So, it's gonna be kind of a weird mixture on this one, so, I'll do a little bit of presenting on it, but I really can't carry the water on this one, so I think we have some members of the audience who may be able to help. So this item, was brought before the Technical Advisory Committee at their meeting, a couple weeks ago. And, it was a request to, look at adding Track J access road to the MTP. And kind of giving some more clarifying information about this project from the port director and having a discussion around it as well as how to pay for it. So the Technical Advisory Committee recommended the following actions: to add Track J with the description you see here at a cost of 5.6 million. And then to help pay for it, remove a project from the MTP. It's the Seward Highway Rabbit Creek Road to Girdwood Planning Environmental Linkage Study. The reason to remove that project is there's already another project underway, so the PEL is not needed. So it basically would free up some money for Track J. I will state this request did not come from AMAT staff, so please bear that in mind with questions or concerns you have. I'm just bringing it from the TAC to you all so you can have discussion on it. So I think Steve Rebuffo and Brad Coy, the TAC chair, can help with any questions you guys might have. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee?
What is the time sensitivity of this?
Pretty urgent at this point because we are getting to the end of the MTP. So if there's a desire to get it into the MTP, the 2050 MTP now, before this is approved, within the first few months of 2024, we would kind of need some action on this today because we're trying to wrap up the document to bring it back to you all in February for final approval. There is always the opportunity after the 2050 MTP is approved to come back with an amendment if there is a desire in that.
So if I could follow up, I guess a question would be, I think I would be interested in, just to my knowledge, the policy committee has not received a presentation on the Track J access road. I understand that, this is a recommendation of the Technical Advisory Committee, which the board director serves on. But I guess I'm just surprised to see this come forward now because we at our previous meeting approved, the changes that we wanted to see on the MTP, and this was not moved forward. And so this feels like another bite at the apple. What is the potential to amend the MTP later to consider this project after we've had a more thorough briefing about the scope of this project?
So I know the port director's here and probably could give you more information about the project. We did provide a little bit of information and he did give a presentation at the TAC. I apologize, I probably should. He is available now if you guys want a presentation. In terms of amending the 2050 MTP later, we basically just have to do it. It's about a 6 to 9 month process to amend the MTP. So if there's a desire to do that, we can get that started as soon as the 2050 is approved.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Aaron, you may have mentioned it, but looking into the action paragraph on the memo, total of the project is 5.6 million, but removing the PEL is 3 million. How's the difference made up?
The difference is there's a little extra funding sitting there for road projects in the MTP. It's never a perfect one-to-one because of the inflation factors that go into the MTP development. So if you say take out 3 million and maybe 3,100,000 or 3,200,000, something like that. And so there's rounding that is part of it. So at this time, if the PEL is removed, or the number 2 item there is acted upon, there is enough money to add this Track J project and still be fiscally constrained.
And if I may follow, Mr. Chair, following up on Member Boland's question, so I probably wasn't paying attention. This cannot push to the next meeting without if we don't act today, it would require an amendment to MTP.
I mean, basically, we're at the point where we're submitting all the final stuff to the consultant to get it put together, to bring it back to you guys in February. If it's pushed off to the January meeting, it won't be done in time for us to get it into our document, into the model, everything like that, in order to have it available in February. So if there's no action today, it would have to wait for a future amendment to the MTP.
One more question, if any. Is there any opportunity for a special meeting? We wanted to do that in order to meet the timing.
Yes, I guess, but we'd have to have a special meeting next week, basically. Like a week from today or tomorrow, to make sure, because we're needing to send the documents and all the changes you guys requested over to the consultants, because all the comment response summary and everything like that, to get the draft document changed, to get the modeling updated and ready to go, and to get it all put together for the February meeting.
Is it appropriate to let Chelsea speak up? Yeah, please.
I'll let you. Chelsea Wardweller, I'm staff project manager for the MTP, and I just wanted to mention for the 2050, we aren't required based on when our, in terms of our federal requirements to have the next MTP adopted until August. We are trying to expedite that process to align with other planning processes that are happening in the state. So in theory, we could wait longer for this change. It just, everything would be waiting on any other remaining changes. So we have all the other changes ready to go. But that's something that the policy committee could decide.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, can I ask Steve Rebuffo? I see he's here, so if I can ask him some questions. Steve?
The cover, I can hear you.
I appreciate that. So, I've just had a couple of concerns about this project, and since I apologize, I didn't see the presentation. Our concern is obviously we're routing heavy equipment close to a neighborhood, and full disclosure, I used to be a youth director at Calvary Baptist way back in the 90s and early 2000s. So I used to attend a church where that road goes right behind. I haven't been there about 20 years, but that's a disclosure issue. But just so you know, so it says only in cases of emergency. Can you tell me, will that road normally be locked? Will it be fenced, and only if it's needed in emergency? Will we utilize it? Will it be utilized for standard traffic? What constitutes emergency use?
In our mind, what constitutes emergency use is a requirement to get traffic off the port when when the actual normal way of getting on and off the port is blocked for whatever reason it is blocked. Whether there's a fire down in the petroleum area over there, a derailment on the tracks that lead around onto Ocean Dock Road. If there is something that is impeding commerce because the normal way in and out of the port is blocked for the period of time it takes to unblock that, we would like to be able to use this to ingress and egress the port.
So will that be fenced and blocked off just in case of emergency?
Track J will always be fenced off.
Right.
So, and there will be a fence there that we can lock if that is the requirement as part of what we determined to be the design for this, is to have that fence locked and not even have a security guard in place there, because we're gonna put a security facility there in the event it does have to be used like the normal ingress egress point for the port is now. If that needs to be locked all the time when it is not in use, we can certainly comply with that. We do that already on the J-Bear side, but the gate we have the only J-Bear.
And it'd be subject to the discretion of the port director on when it's used to get approval in order to open it up.
Well, I would like to think the port director gets a certain amount of latitude to do that, but I don't own the port. The municipality owns the port. I answer to a whole lot of people who are gonna want to make sure they know what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Bob?
I do have a question for Mr. Rebuffo. So there currently is, the current alternate road is available, is that correct?
Well, the current alternate road is what we call Bluff Road. It's paved, it goes up the hill. And we do our best to keep it in the wintertime, keep it clean in the event we have to use it. We also have an agreement with J-Bear to be able to go through J-Bear if need be, because we have a road that connects us to the base. And that can be, we plow that as well. But we can't count on the base to always be as accommodating as they can be on some occasions. And if, as I mentioned, there's over 2 million barrels of petroleum storage right down there where you get on the port and where that bluff road is. If we need another alternative, that would have to be it.
I mean, is the current alternate road gated or is it open?
Yes.
It's okay.
At the top of on the government hillside, and also at the bottom, where it abuts the Crowley terminal.
And one final question and I'll stop, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So the current alternate road and the proposed alternate road at the east end terminate at essentially the same place it appears from the drawing we have.
Close together, but not precisely the same place.
Thank you.
Anybody else, please?
Okay, so currently have 3 access routes.
Well, currently have 2.
Oh, so I guess delineate, okay, so there's Ocean Dock, West Bluff, and J Bear.
Well, the J Bear one is how, it's the route they use when there's deployments coming out of Fort Richardson to come down on the port. It is locked otherwise.
But I think, did you just say that in a case of emergency, it could be used?
It could be used, yeah.
Okay,
But the length of time we'd be allowed to use it is gonna be up to the discretion of the base.
sure.
Because it goes around the runway and through all the operating areas on the base.
I guess, can you clarify the need for a redundant access route then, if we already have 2?
It gives us more control over our own destiny. We don't have to mother may I anybody if it's on the port.
How many access routes do you think we need total?
I think this would suffice. I mean, we are so landlocked, there's not that many other options to consider anyway.
What about the implications on quality of life in the neighborhood?
Which is why it would only be temporarily used, not a frequent and recurring days and weeks arrangement.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? I have one question for you. Timeline on your construction. Can you give us a status? Like, have you started design? When did you plan on constructing the road?
Well, right now, when you look at that picture over there, the drawing on the picture is as far as we've gotten so far.
Okay.
There's 2 things that we need to do before we can in earnest decide whether or not this is even a viable route. Well, one of them is we need to replat track J. So there's been some changes done there that require a replatting, and that replatting action will start, if not this month, next month. And the other thing we have to do is a geotechnical analysis of that hillside to see if it can actually support truck traffic if and when it was needed. We're not certain yet because of the consistency of this or the soils are made of over there, if they can actually handle a road that could carry that kind of weight, even on a temporary basis. So we need to do those 2 things first to make sure we have a viable place to put a road, and then we'll design the routing of it.
So hypothetically, if we were gonna wait for a 6 to 9 month process, once we get the MTP approved, to get an amendment in place, how does that affect your process?
Well, we don't have the funding in place to start the day after tomorrow.
Okay,
So
so you're not a big hurry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some flexibility. This would be a couple of years out
Okay,
anyway.
thanks, Steve.
Can I get a little bit more clarification or detail around the project where the money is coming from? It sounds like we're taking, that there's money that's been allocated to one thing, but it's not needed there because that same purpose is being accomplished through a different project. Is that accurate?
Correct, yes. So the money for the MTP is coming from the state's portion of the federal funding that we show in our MTP. My understanding, this would be a non-AMATS funded project within our area. So state money, other federal money, or the state federal money, other federal money, grant money, whatever money they can come up with.
That's correct.
But that $3 million
With state funding.
is of
State
state
federal,
funding
yeah.
is not going, using that money for this purpose is not going to impede the other planning process that was happening. It's happening for a different mechanism.
Correct. The Seward to Glen, the Seward Highway PEL is not needed because there's already the Seward Highway 98.5 to 118 project underway. So they're one and the same, so they overlap each other. So the PEL is not needed anymore.
Do they overlap entirely?
Yeah, well, I mean, more or less. But DOT has told us that they do not need the PEL and the MTP anymore, and it can free up some of that money, and it will not impact, this action will not impact the Seward Highway project.
If it helps, that was, the reason that I talked to Aaron about the rules clarification, that I wasn't able to make that motion at the last meeting. I would have made that motion to do this.
Is there any local match required for this? Because I don't think that there will be will on the assembly to fund a local match for this project.
Well, there might be, and it will come from either port equity or grants that we are successful in getting.
I had a question for Ms. Wardwaller. Ms. Wardwaller, you said that we're on a timeline that is not, how would I say this? The actual timeline it allows more room than we are using right now. We're working faster than the timeline. So if this were to delay, are there any other impacts other than you have consultants lined up to proceed? If we were to decide that to vote that we would like to postpone this and take it up at the January, February meeting, what does that do to your broader timeline? Or maybe that's a better question for you, Mr. Young and Ellen.
So I'll speak just because then I can be the one to put my foot in my mouth. So the reason we are accelerating the MTP schedule is to help accommodate the state with their STIP. As you know, their 24 through 27 draft STIP is currently in kind of a contingency mode right now, where they got an extension through March of 2024. And part of that was because they have projects in the STIP that are not in the MTP. The 2050 MTP is rectifying that. And if it's approved in time, then the STIP can move forward in time. If it's not approved in time, I'm not really sure what will happen. So we are trying to help work with our partner agency to keep things moving forward. So for us, in our aspect as staff, if there is a reason to delay, we'd recommend delaying until an amendment can be done to the 2050 to not delay the overall 2050. Because it does help that we get the 2050 approved pretty quickly, because we have to start on the next update this year.
Just one more, just to confirm. So an amendment, you said a 6 to 9 month timeline?
Yeah, we've only done one amendment to the MTP that requires air quality conformity determination in the past, and it took about 9 months. We're hoping to accelerate those processes and not take so long, so that's why I give it the range of 6 to 9 months.
And I just want to summarize this back so I make sure I'm understanding you that the perspective of staff correctly is that it may be more helpful if we postpone this item. Postpone it to a time frame where it can be taken up in a subsequent amendment. So a postponement of 6 months. So we're hearing from the port director that this is not something that needs to proceed directly, and we just have the colored lines on the map. Maybe there's an opportunity to have a more thorough briefing and a better idea of design and implications on the neighborhood if we take that up in 6 months from today. And that would also allow then the MTP to be approved and you all to do the legwork on your end to help craft that amendment.
That's correct. Yes, that's rephrased well. But if there is a desire to delay, we ask maybe to delay it for an amendment at a later date versus delaying the whole MTP approval a few months.
Got it. Thanks.
Chelsea.
Apologies, if I may, I believe also part of the reason to be considering it at this point is because the last version of the STIP that I saw, and I'm not in the room where those decisions are made, did include track J. So again, to have the MTP consistent with the STIP, now would be the opportunity to make the 2050 consistent with the draft 2024 to 27 STIP. So there's a few different chicken and egg things happening at the same time. I'll just put it up there, but I don't know what the current version looks like.
Yeah, I don't want to hold up a decent project. I think, the issue Dan and I are seeing is that, when we're getting emails that are concerned about the traffic going through a residential neighborhood and what that looks like. And I think whether you approve it, there needs to be an intentional effort to better communicate with the people that this is only an emergency access road. Because I don't think that's the impression the public has, and that's kind of what we're up against.
And I appreciate that, when it was originally presented, that wasn't stressed enough.
Yeah, and
But
this
that has all,
you know,
that has always been our intent.
limited use emergency access because we've got to get material delivered somehow. And if this road goes down, but that's not the impression. It's kind of like, hey, what's an emergency? Well, is the line too long? It's taking too long to get out of there, the backlog.
No,
There's too much snow.
no.
Traffic's not moving fast enough. What constitutes an emergency? And I think that's something that we got to communicate to the public so they don't think that we're driving these trucks through a residential neighborhood. So thank you.
If I have a question, a follow-up question from Mr. Rebuffo. So I just want to be clear in my mind, Mr. Rebuffo, there's currently an alternate access road.
Bluff Road
Bluff Road is an alternate.
is
access.
currently the alternate.
So if there were an emergency south of Bluff Road that blocked other access to the port, Bluff Road would be if that happened tomorrow, you would use Bluff Road.
Yes. And if we use Bluff Road, the traffic can only get to Bluff Road through Government Hill.
That was my follow-up question, whether the emergency access is via Bluff Road or this proposed alternate access road. The impacts to the neighborhood would be essentially the same. Is that correct observation? Thank you.
In comment, I think that you're gonna accept federal funding, you have to go through the NEPA process, the National Environmental Protection Act, which requires, public involvement. It also requires analyzing a no-build alternative. And have we started that environmental document yet?
No. No.
So,
Because we haven't accepted any federal funds.
sure. So the public involvement process is really yet to happen.
Well, as a city department, we're always subject to public involvement, whether it's only because it's on the Assembly's agenda to approve, in a public hearing or not.
Yeah. So
And, yeah,
So just
so,
because it's in the planning document doesn't mean that it's gonna meet, doesn't mean that it's necessarily gonna get built. If there were significant opposition.
and we understand that. And we understand that. And then we play the parts we don't.
Any other discussion? No, well, thank you, Mr. Buffalo.
You bet.
No
applause. I'm disappointed.
Lost my spot here, but I'm sure that we're probably up for comments from the public. Is that where we're at? Any comments from the public? Mr. Stars?
Thank you. James Starzyk, DOT, Anchorage Field Office Planning. My boss is online, so if I misspeak, please correct me. I just wanted to put a point on a few things that were brought up here. Number one, what Chelsea's saying about the aligning the MTP and the STIP. The STIP cannot include projects, as you all know, that are not included in your MTP. So it's not the MTP getting in alignment with the STIP, it's really the other way around. And DOT has been working really hard with this group, with staff, to kind of make sure that everybody understands where we all stand. And as Chair Holland mentioned, during the last discussion of the MTP projects, he didn't have the opportunity to make the motion to have this project part of that discussion. So this is a bit of a catch up to correct that missed opportunity from him. And yes, if this is not included in the accelerated approval process for the MTP, then the state will have to make changes to a STIP that is already under an incredible time crunch. So, it's just two organizations that are trying to understand each other's needs and accommodate them the best we can. I also want to reiterate the fact that Mr. Holland also brought up, is that this is a planning document, much like the STIP. The STIP, these are planning documents. This is not, when we say we are freeing up $3 million from this to add this project, we're not actually talking about funded projects. We're talking about the theoretical group of funding from that the state has to apply to projects is working in that in that theoretical spending, if we used what all the money on these projects, this is how it works, that's the fiscal constraint of the MTP versus an actual programming document like the TIP or the state STIP. So I just wanted to put a point on that. This is not actually funding anything. It's just allowing it within the fiscal constraint of the MTP.
See, Ms. Peace in the back has her hand up.
Yes, if this is indeed an emergency access road, I think one thing that would be important would be to say that in the title of the project. Right now on the drawing, it just says alternate access road, and that probably doesn't give the community reassurance. And then in the project mention, it also says access road without emergency right up there. I don't know how it's worded in the STIP. Of course, you want to be consistent, but that may or may not affect how it's designed, but it definitely would affect the operational plan or the, how it's used. So anyway, that's just very simple suggestion.
Anybody else? Brad?
Yeah, so Brad Coyne, Missile Traffic Engineer for Anchorage and Chair of the Technical Advisory Committee. So this is here because after last policy committee meeting, Luke and I from DOT were listening to the committee meeting, and it felt like the two items on here, the Seward Highway PEL and this track J, it wasn't clear to us that they were fully like voted for or voted against. It felt like they slipped through the cracks, and talking with Sean, it sounded like he was wanting to make a motion and have that discussion. And so seeing that it didn't get as much of awareness, that was the reason why I coordinated to have it discussed with the TAC, which then created this opportunity to have this more thorough discussion here, the policy committee, with the intent that you could vote one way or the other, and that way AMAS could move forward with the MTP. So this, in my mind, is the opportunity to understand this project, given that it's in the STIP or within the draft STIP, recognizing the access road component, recognizing that the current access to the port is at the adjacent location to the current bluff alternate access. And so if there was an emergency that was at the entrance to the port, it would likely impact the current alternate access. So this was a view to be able to use state funds to help fund this project. If this does not advance either way, and the port wanted to do this project, they could pursue some of the work on their own. They would just need to do it with their own money. So this was an opportunity to look at options to have funding. So I just want to give you that little bit of background where I was coming from and the role that I played in having this be considered and open for discussion.
Thanks, Brad. Are there any other comments from the public on the TAC comments on the draft 2050 MTP project list? I'm not seeing any. What is the will of the committee?
I would move to, need help with the framing on this. I would move to add the Track J Access Road project and remove the STIP number 2 project, the Seward Highway Rabbit Creek to Girdwood PEL project. But I would also suggest that we change the name of the Track J project to the Track J Emergency Access Road project, with the provision that the word emergency be used in all areas where the title shows up.
So, may I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would suggest that we change the name of it, make that a motion, and then once approved, we approve it under the correct name. I do that as 2 motions.
So I'll withdraw my motion.
And so amend it, if you're gonna do Track J Emergency Access Road, or however, whatever alternates you wanna make to make sure it's clear, we'll vote on that. And then we'll be approving something under clear title.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I would move that on the memo for item 5C, that in the the paragraph that begins add tract J access road, that be amended to read add tract J emergency access road. And other places in that paragraph, if there are any. I think that's the only place. And then under background, first paragraph, tract J access road, move to make that subtitle tract J emergency access road. And in that same paragraph, first line, add emergency before access, or tract J access road shows up in that document. I believe that's the last place that occurs.
I'm gonna repeat what I sure I heard a lot, that globally, we're gonna change the name to add the word emergency prior to access.
Yes. Thank you for that clarification.
I second.
And it's seconded by Mr. Cross. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Not hearing any, so the motion is approved. Motion was to change the name. Do I hear another motion?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we.
Sorry. Sorry, just to remind everybody, you can only have one motion on an action item.
Okay,
So, if you would like to do some more work, you would, I guess it's, so you'd have to move to reconsider and then you'd have to amend it.
Aaron, where does that guidance come from? Because that's really, I know we ran into this at the last meeting, but I think it sets us up for it's difficult because we have this entire recommendation before us and we need to be able to break this apart. And it's really hard to say. I think it puts us in an uncomfortable spot of it predetermines the motion to say that we have to have one motion. Rather than how do we go through and amend this if there's not a motion already on the floor? And to be able to take things up as separate motions and then, I don't know, I think that makes it tricky as the policymakers to not be able to have separate amendments and the confusion over what's a motion, what's an amendment. And I think as an assembly member, that's just very foreign to our process. We can make, multiple amendments.
No, you guys have one motion on the floor and then you make amendments to that motion. And then you vote on that as amended. So the same would be here. The main motion would be add this project to the MTP. An amendment would then be adjust the name to say emergency access. That's typically how things are done. You have a primary motion that you act under and then you make amendments to it as you work through the process. So you can put those things in there.
Okay.
Typically, that's why you do a motion in the positive versus the negative.
Here's why it's tough. This motion, this action item does not originate with the policy committee.
Mhm.
So it's we didn't make this up. We're not bringing this forward. This is the technical advisory committee bringing this forward. And so it still puts us in this weird passenger seat
So,
of,
no, go ahead. I apologize.
again, a predetermined motion.
Not really, because your motion could be, you could just not vote on it at all, not get a second, that kind of stuff. So there's the opportunity to still say no to things. It's just a member of the policy committee made a motion on this. And so we just want to make sure it's following.
So if we wanted to take both those actions, rename and make the change in the MTP, then Kent's original motion would have been the correct motion.
There's no you have to do this one first. It's just typically you have a main motion to do something. And then if you want to make changes to that main motion, you do amendments. So, and that's the main thing you have to work on for that one item.
So if I may, I think what Aaron's saying is we shouldn't move to approved it. And then after it was, while it was approved, then I moved to amend. And he wants all the amendments while it's on the table.
Yes.
So planning board does it kind of that way. We got to bring it forward. And then once it's forward, you stack your amendments. And then the final motion is, do we see to approve as amended?
Correct.
So, and what I think Kent was trying to do is he was trying to amend it.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you undo that. It wasn't intentional to make that the motion.
Yeah.
So,
I think
because basically then through a procedural error, then I'm just gonna vote to delay because,
Through the chair,
fix it.
may I?
Please.
So Mr. Cole Hayes would rescind his motion, or anyone could rescind their motion. It would consider would have to be on the, overruling side, but he can rescind his motion, and you guys could just start again with the motion on the floor, amend it. So, and it's like it was never on the floor.
Robert's rules school.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
me too.
But you can amend it as many times as you want. That main motion, you just cannot act on the main motion.
more than one.
We made it smell.
So what would Kent's
So
motion have to be? Move
anybody you
to
can
rescind?
move to rescind the motion, and you need a second. vote.
Okay.
If it's approved, I think, so. it might-
Well, no, you can still rescind it. We just vote to rescind it and then it takes us back. So can't you move to rescind your motion?
I would move to rescind my lengthy motion.
Second,
Are there any objections to rescinding the motion?
It's-
Hearing that it's rescinded.
So you're back to placing the main motion on the floor, whether let's place it, amend it as many times as you do.
and now we're clear. Okay, so
The main motion would be to add,
where we're at,
So
remove this PEL.
now we move to approve it.
is that the motion, Kent?
Yes, so I move to approve
Adding.
adding track J and removing the Seward Highway PDL.
If that is what you're wanting to do.
That's, yes,
Yes.
just to make sure I'm framing correct.
Clarity, if we also wanted to rename that, then,
You do an
before we
amendment.
bring that motion to vote, somebody would make a motion to amend.
You need a second for his motion,
Okay.
now that he's stated it.
Okay,
Discussion.
right.
Thanks.
So we have the motion on the floor is to remove the Seward PEL from the MTP and add track J to the MTP. That's the motion on the floor.
Excellent. Okay, move to amend.
Well, actually, I'd like to speak to this
Okay.
first. Are we gonna have discussion on the motion? Okay. I mean, Ken, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mullin. I guess my thoughts are that, given the timeframe with respect to what Ms. Ward-Waller and Mr. Young and Ellen relayed regarding the need to move ahead with getting the MTP approved in order to make certain that the STIP can align with the MTP. I think the other option of postponing this action for 6 to 9 months is less attractive than that. It appears to me that the new alignment is perhaps better than the current emergency access road alignment, the alternate road alignment. And I think if we do change the name, I think that would be beneficial to both the use of the road and the public. So I don't see a negative impact to the neighborhood, because presumably the current access road would be used in the same fashion as this new road in the event of an emergency. That's my understanding of both the current one and the new one would be used. So based on that, that's the reason for me moving this to, this change to occur.
Any other discussion?
Thank you. So I will confess that I'm disappointed that this is coming back before us and that the technical advisory committee brought it back up. Because I was relieved at our previous policy committee when it was not added. And I am not comfortable with this project being on the MTP or the STIP. And I don't think that it is the duty of AMAPS or the duty of the policy committee just to make projects go on the MTP so that they can remain on the STIP. In my estimation, this project is not developed enough to merit consideration. The sponsor admits that he doesn't know yet if this road is technically feasible. The route passes over a steep bluff and has had no geotechnical analysis done, as we've heard today. The route would conflict with children walking and biking to the Government Hill Elementary School. That's the first reason. Reason number two, I think the need for this project has not been demonstrated. The port currently has 3 access routes: Ocean, Dock, West Bluff, and J-Bear. It's shocking to me that the port would allege that the West Bluff access is too compromised by the nearby tanks. Since those tanks are also near Track J, they are very near residential houses. And the tank operators have on numerous occasions represented to Government Hill that they are safe. If they are not, that merits a whole new conversation. Reason number 3 is possible contamination. Track J sits on the old defense fuel site. That land is contaminated. Disruption of the soils in this area will require remediation or complete removal and replacement of the substrate. Number 4, the Track J proposal, as written by DOT in the STIP, is for a heavy-duty truck route. And both the Government Hill Community Council and myself, we are skeptical of Mr. Rebuffel's pledge that it won't be built or used for that purpose. I believe representing it as an emergency only, I think that's naive. I don't want to say it's disingenuous, but I think I've heard from the Community Council that they feel that that is possible. I fear that this is a crack in the door. I think the entire project needs to be rescoped, rewritten, and presented to the policy committee before it should be seriously considered for $5 million. Number 5, the history of the defense fuel site. The Government Hill neighborhood has been involved with the remediation of this site literally for decades. It was the neighbors who reached out to the military with concerns about venting of benzene and soil contamination. Their advocacy resulted in testing and documentation of environmental contamination and health threats. They then worked with Senator Ted Stevens to convince the military to decommission the site. And after years and years of work by the neighbors, that was done. And the site was partially remediated. They said it's okay for a park, you just can't disturb the substrate. And finally, the site was conveyed to the municipality in 2011 with the explicit intention of creating a green belt safety buffer zone for Government Hill residents. The language from the conveyance says, whereas appraisals were conducted between 2005 and 2010 with adjustments for a revised legal description, surveys, creation of green belt or safety buffer zone, and easements to be retained by the U.S. Army. Government Hill is surrounded by industrial uses, the port, the railroad. And I disagree respectfully with Mr. Colhase that putting another road through the middle of a residential neighborhood would have the same impact as the one that's already there. We're talking about whether or not to build a new road right through the middle of Government Hill. It's inarguable that that's going to create an impact that is potentially detrimental to the neighborhood. And so what I would like to do is make the motion that we do postpone this. And I would like to postpone it for more thorough evaluation. I think would be fitting for a different amendment to the MTP. And so if that's 6 months, I guess I would, the motion could either be to postpone this for a future amendment to the MTP, or the motion could be to postpone this for 6 months. And I guess I would defer to AMAT staff, which would be the more appropriate motion depending on the work that would need to be done. Do you want a specific time frame, or would you rather leave it open-ended?
If you were to make a motion like that, it would be nice if maybe you'd leave it to once the 2050 MTP is approved, then take this up as an amendment to the 2050. That way, you know, because something could happen and the MTP approval is delayed through no fault of our own, and then we don't have as much time as we thought. So that gives us some flexibility if need be, if that's a desire.
So that would be my motion.
But we have a motion on the table already.
I believe mine it can supersede.
Your postponement will supersede them.
Yeah, okay. And I'll second, but I'd like a chance to speak to why. Thank you. So as passionate as Dan's plea is, mine's completely different. So when I think of AMATs and I think of I think of metropolitan area transportation. This is a private road that's strictly being used by the port. It doesn't benefit, I mean, other than cargo in the case of emergency, which you could argue, but we don't put private roads on school districts on AMATs. We don't do that. That's not how that's funded. I mean, this seems to me as if, since the port is kind of user, you know, cost payer, I mean, it's paid for by the people who use the port. Obviously, it ends up on our grocery store shelves, but you know, we don't pay for the road once you hit the security guard onto the port. We don't put those projects on AMATs. We don't put AMATs loading where they got to load and take their forklifts off and cross. That's port property. That's support what they're doing. I don't see this as being any different. I think what it does is unfortunately removes opportunities for things that we need to get funded here locally when we already are limited on funds. I don't oppose having a secondary access at all. I think it's extremely wise. I just don't think putting it on AMATs is the appropriate place for it. I think unfortunately it should be a port caused expense. It should have been put into the budget for the revitalization project. It should have been incorporated somehow, but I don't think it's appropriate to put on AMATs because it diminishes what we can do for public roads that benefit everyone. And so that's why I support it. Thank you.
So I'm gonna repeat the motion that I think is on the table. Dr. Fallen moved to delay the decision on this exchange of projects for 6 months. And that was seconded by Mr. Cross.
I think it was moved to postpone until after the 2050 MTP is approved, and then an amendment can be started. At least that's what I heard. Yes. Okay.
Any other discussion on that? Yeah, well, over about just 2 comments, and access to the port is critical, keeping the state operational. There's several unforeseen conditions that could arise that may reduce the main access to the port. So I think it's critical to keep access to the port in all cases. And then to speak to, that there hasn't been any work done on this project, what you're going to find in the 2050 plan is that there's some holdovers where we have environmental documents on some of those projects, but those were in previous plans. This is a new project into the plan. So any new project in the plan, and maybe James can correct me if I'm wrong, any new project in this plan is going to be at that same stage of development, that it hasn't started the NEPA process because it doesn't have the funding. NEPA process will, and again, that's a National Environmental Protection Act, requires a complete environmental analysis of the project, including public involvement, including all those things that you brought up as concerns. So this project is not unique in its stage of development at this point. That's the 2 comments I had. Are there any other comments? So
I guess I would offer that this is, I see merit in positions that everybody who's spoken has stated. I think that I recognize Mr. Cross's comments that there's a lot of need in Anchorage and there's many competing places where funding can be used. I recognize Mr. Boland's comments regarding the impacts to the neighborhood. My thoughts on that continue to be that whether a road comes up West Bluff Drive or through Track J, there's the same impact to the neighborhood. I'm not minimizing the impact to the neighborhood, but it seems to me to be the impact is still there. It's just on a different road. It still drives through the neighborhood. So I'm not at all minimizing the impact to the neighborhood, but that's my view on that. And I do agree with the chair that many of these concerns, matter of fact, I think all these concerns, without respect to where the funding goes, the other concerns would be fleshed out during the NEPA process, because that's what that is intended to look at, is the environmental justice impacts to neighborhoods, air, noise, risk, all of those things. So I guess that's my comments for now. And I do agree with Mr. Long. I'll close by saying I do agree that this is a little bit outside of the norm. I think it would have certainly been better had we had the opportunity to have a presentation on it and do this over the course of a couple of years. Thank you.
More comments. So I think I should probably have the motion on the floor is to delay this decision to swap out sewer PEL for Track J. Delay that decision till after the 2050 MTP has been approved. And I think we should probably do a roll call as far as voting on whether or not to support that motion. Run down through the roster here. Mr. Cross.
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Volkov. Mr. Foley's.
Um, This is our,
And I vote no as well. No. Do we follow up with a motion?
So we have the main motion still on the table, which is to approve the change to add track J and the Seward to go in PEL, or sorry, the Seward Highway PEL. If there is a desire to amend the names and stuff like that, now would be the time to do that. Is that correct? Okay.
Here, an amendment to the motion.
I move to amend. For the language, the emergency access.
Here, a second.
Second.
Procedure here. So the motion is amended to replace.
We need to vote on the amendment first.
We don't vote on them.
Yep. Yeah, so you could restate the amendment, and then it's, since it has a second, you need to have a vote on the amendment.
Okay. So voting on the amendment, I think we can do this without the roll call. Are there any objections to approving the motion to add emergency to the title? Hearing none, that's approved, which brings us back to the original motion to replace the Seward PEL with track J project in the 2050 MTP. As amended.
To speak one more time,
Sure.
I'm gonna have to vote against it, not because I don't like the access road. I think it's a beautiful improvement. I do not think that through the MTP is how you do it. Excuse me, I don't think that, I think that it should be seen as a port expense. It's an expense of that project. It's strictly being used by the port. It's for their benefit. It doesn't generate general metropolitan area transportation. And it's solely their baby. They should pay for it. It should have been included in the bid when they asked for their nearly $1 billion to get it done. I don't think we should be diminishing the money for road projects that are needed desperately for our schools, our neighborhoods. We're scraping by for dollars. Eagle River hardly gets anything. We're half the size of the Anchorage. We're 1/6 the population. We have 1 or 2 projects barely scraped on there. Yet the port could come in with their access roads. And how much less likely are we able to get anything done out there? Do not think this is the way to do it. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Anybody else? So the motion on the table is to replace the Seward, take the Seward PEL out of the MTP, add track J. Again, we'll do a roll call vote. I think I heard your vote, but why don't you just restate it if you would, please?
My vote?
Yeah,
No.
no,
Gotcha.
gotcha.
Good. That wasn't clear enough. I apologize.
No, you're
Sometimes
very
I'm vague.
good.
Learn that on the
Yeah.
assembly.
Yeah. Dr. Mullen?
Strong no.
No. Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Foley?
yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Feel like we're gonna have to get some traction here to get through our agenda. It's hopefully the hardest.
Wishing one hand, spitting the other.
More caffeine, that's super exciting.
Back to the agenda there. All right. Next is action item 5D, which is the 23 to 26 amendment. And the tip, we have a presentation.
That'll be me walking through it, actually. So I will try and go as quickly as I can. We have 7 pages of changes to walk through, so kind of bear with me as I go through. So you'll see there's a lot of changes for the amendment number 2. So general changes we had a couple of changes that we needed to make based on our certification review. The first one is showing match for all projects throughout the document. So you'll see a lot of those changes in there in red. And then to remove any of the projects in the tip with no funding shown in the fiscal years of 23 through 26. And so we can talk about those more as we get to them, and then update the tables based on the policies and procedures number 3 that updated information for AMATs about, roadway is now complete streets and active, non-motorized is now active transportation. I did update the summary table, so it shows you some more information about ACs, revenue carry forward, naming conventions, and then updated the allocations based on the draft STIP at 90% obligation limit. Okay, roadway table number 2. So first, fireweed lane rehab, we moved funding in FY23 to funding in 25 and funding in 26. That's based on feedback from the project team about moving that funding around. The project is still moving forward and no change to the overall cost. Spinard Road rehabilitation reduced the carry forward amount by 5 million and moved that to RDY 0006 East 4th Avenue signals in 24. And then increase the STBG amount for Spinard Road. Basically, we're swapping funding codes. There's no actual change to the overall cost of Spinard Road. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Extension project has been closed out and is being removed from the tip. Rabbit Creek Road rehabilitation reduced the Beyond 26 funding from 31 million to 20 million to reflect current cost estimate. 4th Avenue signals and lighting upgrade, $5 million is being added to this project in 24 to cover the cost increase, replacing the SURSA fund code with STBG funding, add in the phase codes and increase STBG by 1.25. So the overall increase went from overall total project cost went from 5.05 million to 11.3 million. Reason for that is that project was put in to the MTP years ago. And since then, costs have increased pretty significantly on projects, as well as the understanding of what needs to be replaced with the signal project. Because of the impacts to the road and the sidewalks, those have to be replaced to meet ADA requirements. And so it's a pretty significant cost increase. I will say part of what I'm doing with DOT and the municipality of Anchorage is looking at all the other signal projects we have in our TIP to see if there's going to be another kind of cost increase with those projects that we should anticipate in the future. So you may hear more on that. Potter Drive rehabilitation, move that project from that funding from 24 to 25 and move the construction funding from 26 to beyond 26. Mountain Air Drive added 750,000 for design in FY25 at request of the project team. Motorized pavement replacement, updated the name and then moved funding around to increase the overall project funding from 14.257 to 26.56. This is based on an increased request from the project managers for the cost of projects, as well as funding that was available from some of the other shifting that's been happening. Academy Vanguard Drive area traffic circulations. This project is being moved from 24 to 25 for the design funding and the right-of-way funding from 25 to 26. It reflects the delay in the Seward Highway Diamond Dome Alley project. I did reach out to the municipality of Anchorage about this project, and they are supportive of this delay at this time. Safety improvement traffic support project. Overall funding is staying the same. We're just shifting some of the funding codes because of how SURSA funded. It kind of upfronted, it prorated basically the cost for this project using the SURSA funding. So we were able to reduce some of the later years and free up that funding for other projects. But overall, there's no impact to the total cost of that project. Two Catchway rehabilitation reduced the funding in FY24 from 1.2 to 1 million, updated the funding code and reduced funding in 26 from 800 to 600,000 based on the feedback from the project manager. Eagle River Road rehabilitation projects being removed from the TIP as the cost is too expensive for it to be funded by AMATs. It's a $60 million project, which is, it's a lot when you're looking at the future years and how much might be available. 3rd Avenue signals and lighting upgrade, technical edits for this, and then increased funding in 25 from 100,000 to 930,000 based on feedback from the project team. Again, these projects are increasing because the overall costs have been increasing for all projects. 32nd Avenue upgrade, updated the project name to remove Lois Drive as the municipality of Anchorage is already working on the project, and they requested that we remove that portion of the project and just stick to the 32nd Avenue. And then Folker Street and Dale Street upgrades are being combined, hopefully with the cost savings as we move into further phases of those projects. And so their costs are reflected of the combined total. That's it for roadway 2 or for table 2. Table 3, non-motorized. Diamond Center pedestrian transit improvements projects is being removed as there's no funding identified in the 23 through 26 tip. Staff did reach out to the Public Transportation Department to get their okay with removing this project, and they said it was okay. Next, downtown trail connection project estimate is going from 13.26 million to 16.86 million, based on a cost estimate increase from the project team. Again, we're kind of seeing this on a lot of projects. Cost increases are going up across the board. Fish Creek Trail Connection updated the design right-of-way phase from 23 to 24. This technical edit that we missed with the admin mod, no changes being made to the funding. Potter Marsh improvements, 100,000 for construction in FY25. Active transportation pavement replacement, we reduced the funding in 25 from 1.5 to 330K to help pay for the increase on the downtown trail connection project. Northern Lights Boulevard sidewalk repairs, move funding from 24 to 26 to reflect the current project schedule and add in the TAP funding code. No change to the amount for utilities construction. And then multi-use pathway from Tudor Road to Northern Lights Boulevard. This project is being removed as staff has been unable to get anyone to meet the match for this project. So the municipality of Anchorage can't use their bond funding on this because it is not on municipal right-of-way. MOA Parks and Rec is stretched to capacity with all the other trail projects, and staff did reach out to the Parks Foundation to try and get the legislature to help with the match, and no match was found for this project. So at this time, it's recommended being removed from the TIP. Just as a reminder, it can always come back at a later date through an amendment or in future TIPs. Plans and studies. Seward Highway, Glen Highway Connection PEL. This project is being removed from the TIP as there's no funding identified. This will not impact the project any at this time. However, just a note, if additional funding is needed for that project, we will have to add this back into the TIP as through an amendment. 92nd Avenue Extension Reconnaissance Study. This project is being removed. There's no funding identified in the 23 through 26 TIP. Safety plan, same thing. That project is still underway. This will not impact that project moving forward. AMAT's Tudor Road Corridor Plan, removed the SURSA funding and added in, spelling error, sorry, added in STBG funding, no change to the overall cost. Northern Lights Benson Boulevard, removed the SURSA, added in STBG, no change to the overall cost. This project was moved from 24 to 25 to accommodate staff availability. DOT staff doesn't have the ability to do more than one corridor plan a year, based on what we have right now. Non-motorized facility inventory and mapping project is being removed from the TIP due to limited staffing capacity, and funding is needed for the AMAT's congestion management process update. AMAT's congestion management process update project is being added to address corrective action number 4 received during the 23 certification review. Project utilizes funding from the non-motorized facility and inventory mapping project, as well as all the staff time. And then freight mobility study update project is being added in to update that study. It's getting pretty old at this point. It's from 2017. And part of our comments from the FHWA and our certification reviews, our plans that we develop are often stagnating for long periods of time, and they'd like to see them updated on a more regular cycle. So we're trying to move forward on that. Congestion management or congestion mitigation and air quality. There were some reductions for funding for the Anchorage Rideshare Transit Marketing of STBG funding and an increase of CMAQ funding. Basically, what we did here is just shifting funding codes around. There's no change to the overall total cost for the projects. Just some funding needed to be adjusted because of the reduced funding in the STIP for our allocations. Traffic control signalization, this is another SURSA one. It was upfronted. Most of the funding was paid for in 23 for SURSA funding. So we reduced the STBG by the same amount, no change to the overall total. And then the Muldoon Transit Hub mixed use development reduced the CRP amount to account for the slight reduction in the new STIP. So CRP is our congestion, carbon reduction program. HSIP table, we updated table 7 based on feedback from DOT. You can see all the changes there, and we added in 5 new projects for HSIP. I don't really have a lot of information for you other than what you see in these tables here. If you have questions about the project descriptions or anything, I'd have to get that from DOT itself. I'm only sent project name and funding. Table 8, NHS. So first project, Seward Highway, Dowling Road Interchange Rehabilitation. Project is being removed as there's no funding identified in the 23 through 26 tip. Looking at the draft STIP, the funding for this project is not until 27 or beyond. That is outside the AMAT's fiscal years for our tip. So this project cannot be in our tip if there's no funding in the 23 through 26 timeframe. Seward Highway, O'Malley Road, Diamond Boulevard reconstruction phase. Project is being removed as draft tip or draft STIP funding is 27 or beyond. So it's outside the fiscal years. Seward Highway and Tudor Road interchange reconstruction funding is being reduced in 25 from 1 million to 210,000 based on information from DOT. Glen Highway and Highland Road interchange preservation operational improvements. Funding in the draft tip shows this beyond the fiscal years of the tip, so it is being removed. Muldoon Road pavement preservation, same thing. Funding is beyond the fiscal years of the tip, so it is being removed. Abbott Road pavement preservation, this has been removed completely from the STIP, so it is being removed from the tip. And then Seward Highway 36th Avenue interchange project is being added at the request of DOT. This project is in the 2040 MTP, so we are on that side able to add it to the tip. Transit. Just a quick couple of updates here based on feedback from the Alaska Railroad and the Public Transportation Department. Alaska Railroad was just some match namings. I had the wrong match names in there. I said local match, but it should be Alaska Railroad match. You don't see that on the memo. I apologize. And then just some quick updates for Public Transportation Department. Their project for the competitive bus program, we removed the section 5339B from the project name, because that wasn't needed on that one anymore. Updated the fund code and increased the FY 24-25 funding from 0 to 40 million. I believe this is to reflect a need for grant funding, or they will receive it for a project. I can't speak on it too much, so we'd have to ask Transit to provide more information if they are here. And then we had the Alaska Railroad bridge rehabilitation increase in 24 from 50,000 to 5 million. And then we have table 10, other federals. So first, the Port of Alaska Modernization Program PAMP is being removed as there's no funding identified in the 23 through 26 TIB. Bus and Bus Facility Infrastructure Investment Project is being removed as there's no funding identified in the TIB. Port of Alaska Smart Grid, the changes you see there are in reflection of working with the Port of Alaska for this particular project. So increasing the funding in 24 and 25. I think there's a duplicate. I apologize. I'll have to delete that. Port of Alaska Solar Design and Engineering removed or other federal funding from the fund code based on input from the Port of Alaska. And then we added two new projects in this section, the International Airport Charging Stations and the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. Both of these are at the request of DOT. Both of them are consistent with our 2040 MTP. So on that end, we are able to add them to the TIP at this time. Okay. That's all I had for that. The Technical Advisory Committee reviewed Amendment 2 and they recommended no changes and releasing this for a 45-day public comment period. So it'll go out for 45 days, including going to the Municipal Assembly for their comments, and we'll bring all of that back in March and have you guys review the public comments and let us know how you'd like to proceed. That's all I had on that one. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on TIP amendment number 2?
Questions or comments?
Questions or comments?
Okay. I'm disappointed to see planning project number 19, the non-motorized facilities inventory and project being recommended for removal.
Mr. Boland, which page is that? I just want to.
That is on table 4.
Thank you. Sorry, that's right.
Well, I'm actually looking at the document.
Oh,
Yeah, it would be on table, I believe it's on table 4 under plans. It's on the 4th table of the PDF. It's page 6 of the PDF, plans and studies. It's at the bottom of that page.
So the assembly, as part of our resolution on the TIP, this is a project that we strongly supported. And in fact, we expressed a desire to expand this project to include easements and right of way. That was in response to some public feedback we had heard. I think that on, meeting with Aaron and that staff, and Craig Line in the planning department, I guess the understanding that was reached or what was communicated to me is that at that time it was not capacity or funding envisioned in the TIP at that time to expand this project, but to remove it entirely. I mean, it's definitely contrary to the will of the assembly. So I don't know, it's tough because this is kind of the first time that I'm seeing this, and there's a lot of changes recommended here. And I don't, off the top of my head, I would be able to say, well, let's add this one back in and take this one out. I just haven't had an opportunity to sit with this long enough. And yeah, so I guess that's my. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also had some concerns. I know that Will Tagan emailed you, but on table 2, the project that is the Eagle River Road rehabilitation. I understand that was a really large project and it makes sense at its scope. But, that was both not only road rehabilitation, but also non-motorized trail improvements right there that feed Ravenwood Elementary. So there's a elementary school that's it's heavy traffic in there, and there is a partially completed bike path. But those projects, when we eliminated that, what's sad is that one included non-motorized, and when we cut that one, I'm wondering if there's a way to at least reduce the scope to something manageable where we can continue or finish the bike trail project that is unfinished, so that we have continuing access, or we can improve it to the Ravenwood Elementary in the neighborhoods. And you guys probably aren't familiar, but that's a state road, and there's no way, it's a 55-mile-per-hour road, and there's an elementary school. I mean, it's bad enough just trying to get your kids in and out. It's actually on our transportation safe routes to school. It's one of our issues. So it's interesting we have something that's a safe route to schools issue. Hey, this is a transportation. We understand this. It was on there, but now it's being dropped off because it was included in a really, really large project, but I'm wondering if we can't reduce the scope. And when we get some public comments, I'll let Will take and speak a little bit more about that, but I would like to see that amended down. I realize 60 million is too much, but even if it's just what we need to finish that small section or to get those non-motorized uses completed would be beneficial. Well, thank you.
Guess I can ask a question about that one. That came off the tip because the schedule is beyond the end of the tip, is that true?
No, that one's being recommended for removal because it's too expensive for the overall project. Cost increases are significantly higher than when we put the tip together.
Okay.
And so looking at the outer years and current costs for projects, we can't afford a $60 million project.
Sure.
And I think at some point, we as AMATs, you guys need to decide what is our limit of project sizes that we put into the tip, because right now we don't have any. So staff has no guidance to be like, okay, you can't go over 50 million, 40 million, whatever it may be. But at 60 million, we can't afford, because that's going to take 3 years of our allocation to fund.
Yeah, no, and I would agree if you look at the entire scope, but the difficulty is, again, they merged motorized and non-motorized, and if they had fractionalized it out or be able to say, we can do this section here rather than look at, 8 miles of road, how about we just look at this 1 mile of non-motorized? That's part of that project, but it's vitally, probably the most important part of it. It's the heaviest, most access of the elementary school. So I don't know how you go in and you amend those, because I agree, if someone takes too big of a bite of an elephant, you're gonna choke. But can we make it more manageable so we get some of these critical projects done?
If I may ask an educational question. So some of these changes I recognize, some of them are things that can be for the policy committee last month and in previous months.
Mhm.
Some of them are clearly shifts from requested by project managers based on where they are in the project status. Some of them are more wholesale changes like this. So are those developed just through the staff review? That's question one. And what is the opportunity to make a change such as Mr. Cross suggested, where we would create a new project that would be the non-motorized component of this project? Or is there a way to proceed with it?
So for the first question, typically, yeah, any of the changes you see here kind of are through staff working with our partner agencies. So I work very closely with the Department of Transportation, who, as you know, is required to design and construct most of the projects within our area. And they all have project schedules where they say where things are at, or if there's slippages or anything like that. And I get routinely updated, probably monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, however it is, whenever right now, on project slippages. And basically what I do is I compile all that information and I put it into an amendment and basically say, okay, we need to get an amendment moving forward because we have enough need. We've reached our kind of limit of when we need to get the amendment started based on the time period. Compile it all together, do my best guess at that time, and then bring it all to the TAC and PC, and then also the public for their feedback on it. And then your second question, is there an opportunity? Yes, there is an opportunity to add in an active transportation component for a larger scale road project. That, you know, oh, this was part of this. It's just not my job to do that. I don't want to, you know, tell you all what to do. So I just bring this forward. And then if you guys are like, we want to take a piece out, can we do it? Yes, you can do it. I don't know what the cost is. I don't know what the termini is. At this point, I know the member of the public has an idea, but costs have dramatically increased since then. So I don't have the ability to tell you how much the cost is, when we can get started on it, where it can fit in. Because right now the TIP is fiscally constrained. So if you want to add a project into what I have before you now, we'd have to move or take something out to free up the funding.
Are you gonna take this project out? I mean, you would take this project out to nominate it as a non-motorized project, probably?
So the actual pathway connection is in the MTP. So the policy committee could just say, this is what we want added in. We wouldn't need a nomination for it. It's through this action. It's part of the public process. Because remember, regardless of whatever you guys decide, it still has to go out to the public to provide comments on. And so we wouldn't need a nomination. You guys can just do it if you want.
But the ask for today is to release this to the public.
Correct.
So if we decide to make any changes to this, we would wait till next month to release it.
I mean, we could just make the changes now, or we could just make them during the public comment period. That's kind of what we've done in the past. Like, it's not that hard to make the changes. We would just be guessing on the cost estimates now. And so I don't have the ability to say, I know for certain it's going to cost $1 million in design in FY25 to get this project started. I need more time to be able to research that. And I can do that during the public comment period, and I can bring it back as part of that whole package for you all afterwards.
Does it have to, would it then go back out to the public if it's changed during the public comment period?
I mean, what we could do is add it in as illustrative right now with the request from the committee saying, staff, research this information, bring it back to us as part of the public comment period. So make it noted in whatever we release for the public, the intent is to do X, Y, and Z. So the public knows about it and has the opportunity to comment on it. We would also make sure that, you know, the air quality conformity folks know about it as well as we're moving forward with that.
I mean, Mr. Chair. Just a comment for my colleagues. I think, you know, given Mr. Cross's comments on the previous discussion topic where you noted that you believe that Eagle River sometimes that maybe doesn't get the beloved needs. I don't have the motion at hand, but I would support the discussion about that change that has been suggested. It's not a motion, it's just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, just to reiterate, you know, my perspective is this is a lot for me to process all of these changes, and I don't have a lot of information to decide, you know, first time what I would want to swap, and I just don't know how comfortable I feel in terms of making this ready for prime time for public comment. So I think I would feel more comfortable take a month and process this for myself, being able to meet with staff and ask questions before putting this out for public comment. And I think I'm also concerned about, well, put this out for public comment, and make all these changes. What if they're not all just in response to public comment? So I think I would like the policy committee to have an opportunity to digest this, make our own recommendations, and then put it out for comment. So that's the question of that is this something that we could take up in our January meeting? That's my first question. And my second question is, I know table 3 is now called active transportation. But then the ID numbers are all still notarized, NMO, whatever the number is. Can we change that?
Not for the ID numbers, for any active started project, any of the non-started projects, we can probably go ahead and do that. I think moving forward as well, we'll make sure that it's changed to whatever,
AT.
yeah, probably, yeah, I haven't figured that out yet, but,
Maybe you just have to type of formerly known as.
yeah, we'll have to put something in there, but yes, we can adjust that for the ones that are not currently. In terms of the schedule, yes, we can delay it until January. I will just put out that caution, as always. It takes us forever to get through any of our amendment process, typically 5 to 6 months. So if we wait till January, we won't put it out until February, March. February, March would be the public comment period, go to the assembly. We'd bring it back in April, and then final approval would happen in May, probably by the end of June. And that gets us really close to the end of the fiscal year. So just putting that out there, that is where we're at, and often run into trouble when we're that close to the end of the fiscal year.
One follow-up, Mr. Chair, please. So in my role as one of the assembly designates to the policy committee, I've done a lot of work to try to bring this type of stuff back before the larger body for the assembly for us to bring in. And so I understand we could do that in maybe the 45-day public comment part, but it's a lot of work drafting those resolutions and getting them into our process, getting them, basically to where we can get them on one of our agendas. And so for that reason, I think I could raise that as a reason to maybe delay this a little bit so that I can take it to Congress.
So we wouldn't actually make this available for anyone until the policy committee releases it for the public, because there could be changes. So we wouldn't send it forward to the assembly or anyone else until after it's released.
But I could take this to my colleagues and say, look, this is what they're proposing.
When is our January meeting?
Well, we actually have to talk about that.
Okay, because we have assembly meeting on the 9th. So I'm thinking logistically and making sure that we get notices. What does that look like? So, let's talk. Tell me what I'm talking about.
Well, it's actually one of our items later. I hope we can get to, because there's a desire to change our meetings from the 1st and 3rd from the 2nd and 4th to the 1st and 3rd Thursdays of every month. So if that were to happen, our next policy committee meeting would happen January 18th.
How often do you amend? Yes, but you essentially be starting on a new amendment as soon as we approve this one, or?
Probably.
Yeah. So there's an opportunity to add that later on too.
Yeah, there's opportunities to add things to future amendments as needed, depending on it. If it's needed in the 24 fiscal year, we wouldn't have enough time. This is our one opportunity to add things in during the FY24 fiscal year.
Are there any other comments?
Just one comment.
Yeah, that I would put up that. There's no more comments from the committee. So are there any comments from the public? 23 to 26 tip amendment number 2. Who started it?
Yeah, James Starzik, DOT planning again. I would like to start by giving my sincere thank you to Aaron and the rest of the staff working with us. The vast majority of the changes that you see to the actual figures on these tables are from input from project managers at DOT. These changes reflect the needs for budget and schedule changes to advance projects as efficiently as possible. It is a constant iterative process with Aaron and I. We have what we call the federal obligation status reports, which are bi-monthly reports from all project managers on central region projects, to which I get a lot of this information. We held one today. So even some of the figures that are in there now, I will be drafting up some edits to Aaron to incorporate. You know, obviously it's a very fluid document. On the other hand, it's a very static document, and the fact, as Aaron mentioned, the time that it takes to do a amendment is fairly long. And as far as 24 goes, federal fiscal year 24 goes, this is that one bite at the apple. And so we are trying extremely hard internally at DOT to give the most accurate information to AMATs to craft these needs, knowing full well that this is going to, you know, in the life of a project, it changes, can very quickly at times. In 4 months, we will have different needs, and we'll have to live with that. We'll figure it out as we go. But this is really the best and most accurate representation of DOT's needs to forward AMAS projects. So I would wholeheartedly support getting this out to the public so that we can keep the process moving as expediently as possible.
Any other comments from the public? Gentleman in the green.
Hi, Will Taggett, Executive Director of Chugach Mountain Bike Riders. And I'm here really to advocate for Chugach Eagle River, mostly our non-motorized systems. I really appreciate your comments, Ken, about taking care of Chugach Eagle River. I was involved in the scoring, public comments about the scoring, and I had concerns when we first came out with the 2050 MTP that it did not include the geographical equity between Chugach Eagle River and the Anchorage Bowl. And as you see with the projects, that's exactly what happened when we had to. When the MTP came out, there's a single out of 93 some projects in non-motorized. There's only one in Chugach Eagle River, and that's also reflected in the Complete Streets projects as well. And I appreciate through the public comment period that the policy committee here has been able to address some of that, the inclusion of Artillery Road for our streets. We really appreciate you listening to the community for that. We appreciate the adjustments to the Glen Highway project. I'm flabbergasted that last month you guys approved wording to add the separated non-motorized path for the 5 miles along Eagle River Road, and now this month to see it being removed from the projects. It's just quite a lot of whiplash for our community. I do appreciate Kevin's proposal to add the smaller path in there. What's in the MTP is just a 1 mile section extension of the path. And last year, Senator Merrick actually got extra funding to halfway finish that project already. So the 1.5 miles that is already built was repaved last year. So that's done. The MTP from 2040 just has a 1 mile section. The original proposal was miles 0 to 5.3 at O'Reidner, redoing the highway and with the associated path. The first 1.5 miles is already done. The next mile is pretty straightforward. The end part past Mile High to O'Reidner, that might be a little tricky. And so that maybe is not appropriate for the tip. Maybe we just need the 1 mile that's along the section line that is included in the previous MTP. So we just want to see work moving forward towards Chugach Eagle River projects, and we realize that you guys have a tough job right here. While you guys are assessing this and considering adding in that 1 mile path that is being proposed for removal, I would also appreciate a reconsideration of Assemblymember Cross's amendment to the MTP last month for the section of bike path from Paradise Lane to Thunderbird, a 1.5 mile section. If we are seeing a savings from the canceled Tudor Road project of almost 15 million, there was some confusion, I think, between some projects. One project had a bridge or a tunnel, a grade separated crossing, which was much more expensive than the project that Assemblymember Cross proposed. So in the public comments, there were 3 major bike paths and the Artillery Road. At the moment, Artillery Road, we're appreciative of. The one project that's in there already, we're appreciative of, but losing Eagle River Road is tough, and I'm probably at time.
You are, yeah, exactly.
I did, I get
Thank
money
you.
for free.
Yeah, but thank you.
Let me just, if you recall at the last meeting, when I had brought up that connection from Old Glen up to Thunderbird Falls, some astronomical number of like $10 million. And that was, we discovered was wildly inaccurate. That was comparing to a project that had infrastructure improvements and drainage and stuff, and it doesn't compare at all. And so to say that this project, because it's a mile and a half, will cost 10 million is, I mean, it's already it's an established route. I mean, it's not like it's crossing a river, needs a bridge or anything like that. So the scope of the project is probably closer to 3 million as opposed to 10 million that was projected. So that was part of the, I felt like the misinformation jaded people against the project, and that's what we were speaking to. So thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing any, what is the will of the body?
I would move to take this up at our January meeting.
Second.
Postponed to the January meeting. Moved by Mr. Boland and seconded by Mr. Cross. I'm gun shy now, do I?
I can switch motion. Okay. Yeah, I would just like more time to digest this. We're looking at, I think, some extensive changes, and I'm sure from hearing Mr. Starzek's comments, it seems like the DOT, for instance, had a lot of time to engage with AMAT staff or other entities and kind of make their recommendations. I would like to be, I think, afforded the same opportunity as a policymaker to digest these changes and work with staff to get more information so I can make my recommended changes before this goes out to
Any other discussion on the motion?
No, likewise, I just have some small amendments here, but I want to make sure I give accurate accounting on them. I'll need some time to do that. And also, we like to at least somehow get this before the rest of our assembly, and make sure that we're on there. But I want to make sure you understand. I understand that by pushing this out, we're really pushing the timeline, and that we need to come in here with the intentional to wrap it up at the next meeting and not to push this football any further down the field. So thank you.
Yeah, comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am uncomfortable with the potential risk to the schedule with the upcoming fiscal 24 deadline. On the other hand, I agree that it would be better, in a better world, I would have availed myself of opportunities to more thoroughly review this and provide an opportunity to comment. Before this motion, I was going to consider moving that we at least add the bike trail component as an illustrative project so that it was in front of the public if this went forward for public process. So since this motion's on the floor, I won't do that, but I was considering doing that because I do recognize that some of these changes are pretty wholesale and we haven't had a chance to see them. Others, as Mr. Starzek said, are really monetary and scheduling, and they come out of the expertise of the project manager. So thank you.
Question for staff. We add it as illustrative. That doesn't have to be fiscally constrained. Is that true?
Yeah, if it's illustrative, it's technically not part of the tip at that point. And if we ever want to be able to add it into there, we have to do it as part of it.
Any comment? I guess the only comment that I have is it's a living document. Again, sounds like I might lose the vote, but I think I would move it to public comment, just to keep that moving, understanding, there's definitely some good projects that, could land in there, but there's also more opportunities to add those in at a later date. I would just prefer to keep the process moving so that we can keep our projects on track. That's my comment. The motion on the floor is to postpone, I guess, the vote on this until our January meeting. And Mr. Cross, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Bowen, yes. Ms. Pocon. Mr. Collins.
Yes.
I'll vote no as well. The yeses have it. Very good. It's 3:21. Should we think about extending, or do we have that option here?
I'm not available to stay past 3:30, but.
Okay.
Yeah, we can actually go ahead and. Yeah, we can go ahead and skip the next action. We can, if somebody would delay, or we can just delay the next one until the next January meeting for Tisno. Okay, sounds good.
To have a motion to delay action item 5E until the next meeting. Seconds. I guess that's the one. I'd say Mr. Coley's moved in, Mr. Bowen, Dr. Bowen seconded. Anybody opposed to that? Seeing anybody, so we will postpone item 5E until January. Are there any other action items, Aaron?
No, there are not.
So we're going to move on to agenda item 6. Project plan updates. Agenda item 6A is 2024 meeting dates and times. We have a presentation.
Just a quick one from me. So currently our meeting dates and times are the second and fourth Thursday of every month. So the second Thursday is the technical advisory committee. The fourth Thursday is the policy committee. Right now, we have to adjust the TAC and PC meetings in November and December because of the holiday calendars, and we have to adjust them to the first and the third. It typically becomes really confusing for the public and other committee members of the shift in there. So staff was bringing forward the possibility of the 24 meetings for the TAC and PC to shift them from the second and fourth to the first and the third for the entire year. The reason for this is to keep it consistent for every month where possible, recognizing there may still be some holiday interactions every 5 or 6 years. And it also helps keep it, clear for the public that it's consistent every month, regardless of the holiday schedule, with a few exceptions. At the same time, we're also asking to possibly shift the time for both meetings to start at 12:30 and end at 2:30. The reason is we often seem to be butting up against our cutoff periods for the TAC and the PC. And there are often meetings after us, or it's the end of the day. And so we often get people who can't stay, and we sometimes lose quorum or are close to losing quorum. So this was brought before the technical advisory committee, and they said, sounds good with the shifting of the days. If we can also shift the start times to start at 12:30 and also have the TACs shift their meeting location from where they're at in the Elmore building to this room here. So kind of wanted to bring it before you all and see what you thought, if the PC would be okay with that shift or not.
You do comments, questions from the committee?
We're conferring over here.
So we're looking at the assembly schedule. So the third Thursday of every month, around noon, we have budget and finance. And so,
It goes until 12.
it goes from 12:20 to 1. It's one of those morning ones that starts in between. So, I mean, if you start at noon, I understand wanting to move it up. It just, means that Dan and I would not be attending budget and finance. I like the time. I don't mind but that's our last meeting of the day. And so we're open the rest of the afternoon. It gets done around 1:30, so there wouldn't be a time. I don't want to hold up anybody else's schedule. I guess we'll make it work.
Is that meeting in this building?
Downstairs,
Upstairs, yeah.
155.
Would you guys be able to do 1 o'clock instead?
Yeah,
Would
if
that
you do
be-
1 o'clock, then at least we can attend 45 minutes of it or do whatever it is and, then walk up. It's because community and economic is right before that, because we can community economic development, getting budget and finance, and then I'm 1:15. It's from 12:15.
Start time if possible.
We don't miss the end. Say, hey, guys, can we keep it brief? That would be an incentive for them to stay on schedule.
We wouldn't be
Just
able
look
to,
at it.
so for the PC meeting, we wouldn't be able to stay over very much because I believe the Muni has a meeting in this room at 3:30 on that Thursday, every other Thursday. So we would conflict with that and we'd have to keep it pretty close. It's been a challenge trying to find a day that works, that's consistent for
I
everyone.
don't have a calendar in front of me because the Thursday meeting is the Thursday before assembly. So that's our internal pre-agenda. Without a calendar, I can't see where.
And I think it falls on third Thursday because of how them, that was a consideration of the technical advice.
That's my meeting. I can push that back a little bit. So.
I could request they just move up budget and finance 15 minutes. You know what I mean? It's just a weird one where they book it in
I
there.
think I'm gonna say I'm cool with.
As long as it's one instead of noon.
Okay,
They're bringing lunch.
Yeah.
it's actually been discussed that we need to start having a salad bar or something in our meetings if we're gonna do lunch. So
Drop the salad.
I'm looking into our, except pizza, something,
So drop
whatever.
the salad bar.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Open bar.
Just a bar. I can't, I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Does anybody in the public have a comment on that? Nobody cares.
I'm not seeing any. What's the will?
This is not an action. item.
Oh,
It's just a discussion amongst you all, and it seems like that'll work, so we'll go ahead and try that for January. We'll start that for 24. If it does not work for everybody, then we can readjust as needed.
How easy is it for you to change the other? I have a sub cabinet meeting I have been missed. At 12:30.
I'll just have to check with Claire and check with our assembly staff and schedule stuff.
Just so you know, if we would like to continue any of the other items, we would have to extend the meeting, but the other items can be delayed to January if you'd like.
I believe there's a meeting in this room at 3:50.
Okay.
Seconded.
So we can delay 6B and C, and so we don't need an action on that. We'll just delay it until.
So we have a motion, adjourn. Second by Ms. Ocon. Are there any objections to that motion? Done. We're adjourned.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Everyone?
That's how government happens.
Oh, stop the recording. Thank you. I think I already exited out of it.
One of the.
We need to update this bad boy, don't we? Congratulations.
That's right. Yeah, congratulations, Emma.
Will.
Good.
Making magic happen, like, you know, the first thing.